So we're going to make a few loud bangs. They're going to load the 6-pound piece. Now this gun was capable of firing a 3¼ inch cannonball up to about 1.25 miles. Normally pulled by 6 horses, but we're pulling it by hand today. Give me a couple of loud bangs. If you want to keep your mouths open and just partially cover your ears, there may be a bit of percussion, but in the field of this we should be okay. Number 1 gun, fire. Like I said, this was 6-pound cannon, capable of firing 3 types of ammunition at the period. First type of ammunition was a round ball, 3¼ inches in diameter. They would travel that at nearly 1.25 miles, and they would actually bounce that across the ground and try and take out the rows of infantry in front of them. The second type of ammunition was a case round, and that was again a round ball, but this time it was hollowed out, an iron ball, hollowed out, with gunpowder inside, and a fuse attached to it, so as that was fired up into the air, it would explode in the air and shrapnel would come flying down from the sky above. This was invented by Captain William Shrapnel in about 1780, 1785. Very effective against mass troops coming towards you. And as the troops got really close, up to about 450 yards away, they would fire a third type of ammunition, which was a carcass ammunition, which was basically something about the size of a baked bean tin, slightly larger, filled with musket balls. And that would come out as a shrapnel round again, but it would come out and scatter as soon as it left the barrel of the gun and take wide devastation in front of the gun, and they'd start firing at about 450 yards until the enemy got really close. Now in 1805 they did some trials with this type of gun in Hyde Park, and they estimated how many rounds it would be against cavalry and infantry marching towards a fixed gun position. Now, the infantry and the cavalry formed up about 600 yards. They obviously didn't fire straight at them, but they worked out the times it took to get along. Now, the average time of actually reloading a rifle or a musket at this time was probably 2 to 3 rounds a minute, whereas a well-trained artillery crew can fire 8 rounds a minute. Now, we actually worm and mop the barrel out each time for safety reasons. 1 gun would be, that was just 1 gun. And these guns fired in batteries of 5. So a devastating weapon indeed. And obviously, about 60 years later, when they actually had the charge of the Light Brigade, you can see how much devastation was actually caused when attacking guns from the front. So the tactics was to obviously attack guns from the rear or from the side, or with artillery artillery against artillery. The only thing was, back in the day, it was ungentlemanly to fire artillery against artillery. So the tactics was to use cavalry to move men into square, and the artillery would then shoot the big squares of men. So the cavalry would come down there, would force the men to get defensive, and then when the infantry came back out again, you carry on firing at each other's infantry. Now, normally it would take, we'd have about 15 men to operate each one of these guns. And it was only 5 people to actually operate and fire the gun itself. The other 10 were actually there just to move, either hold the horses or move ammunition to the gun. Now, either side of the barrel itself is 2 little boxes there. One of them holds a lit fuse for actually lighting the actual rounds and igniting the bangs. And the other side held 16 rounds of ammunition. The limber behind carried another 64, and behind that would be an ammunition cart with 200 rounds. So most of the actual gun crew was actually just feeding the gun with ammunition. They were also issued with a certain pistol which had 2 barrels for close quarter combat, and normally they would carry a light cavalry sabre. Now the idea was to bring the gun in and to support cavalry, so it came in quickly with the cavalry, supported the cavalry, and then when the cavalry retreated, the gun would retreat with the cavalry. Now, during the period, we also had foot artillery, and their guns would be brought in to support the infantry. And they would move up with the infantry and wouldn't be supported with horses. So this was very much a flying artillery battery. You don't want to stand down when you get a mouthful of smoke. Because they were a royal regiment, they wore royal blue. The green coats, or the grasshoppers as they were known to the French, was the first, not really camouflage, but concealment against the enemy. They would actually operate and fire in pairs, one supporting the other. So one firing, aiming and firing, whilst the other was loading. And they would go out and harass the enemy and stop them from forming up in position, and move out in front of the main body of force. And generally they were first onto the field to clear the ground, so to give time for the infantry and artillery to come out behind them. First type of rifles were actually formed around 1800. They're lying down there with this foot into the sling of the rifle. Now the rifle was much more accurate than the musket. The general Brown Bess musket accuracy 40 to 50 yards, so they stood very close to each other and fired. The rifle accuracy up to 250 yards, simply because it had a rifled barrel, and that means it's got grooves in the barrel, so the ball would spin and be much more accurate.